started out so informally. I never knew what I was getting into until late, too late. What happened was, I'm sitting in a meeting with Patricia.
Peer review.
That's right, it was a peer review committee meeting. And Patricia looks across at that pause and says, hey, let's do a workshop.
Don't we always have fun together?
And that's what I thought. I said, we always have fun together. She's so funny. And she's so smart, and she knows so much. This would be a great way.
From Liz.
Well, that's what I said. I said, I'll be able to learn a lot from her. So then I say yes, and then all of a sudden, we have to plan something. And now it turns out, Tricia says, well, I thought I'd be learning a lot from you. What do you want to say? And I'm saying, Tricia, why don't you start first? You're the one with the gray hair.
Right, the seniors, right? So then we went to the peer review committee and we said, well, what do people need to, be learning more about? And then we said, well, anything you want to do. So we said the place where a lot of skills can be thrown together is?
It's the crosstalk. And it's also where, when we're doing the peer reviews, we see people either using skills or not using skills enough. We thought, well, why don't we just tackle this one and see what we can contribute, and also what we can share with you all, and you can share with us. So that's what we're going to do here.
And I don't know if you ever feel bored in your crosstalk. Sometimes when I'm peer reviewing and observing everybody else's crosstalk, I'm getting so bored. Because it's just like the same old question, the same old rehash of a position. And it's just like, it's not going anywhere. So we said, well, how do we make it vital? How do we make it provocative? How do we get to something? And of course, you all know what makes something really vital to you. It's when somebody's talking about what you're interested in. It's really important to you. It's
What you
something
care
that, yeah, what you care about. If somebody brings up a topic that's really crucial to you, hey, it gets your attention right away, right? And that's the one simple formula we want to give to you today. That the way to make the crosstalk or any part of remediation vital is to really hone in on what the parties want. What's most concerned to them. And so we have a couple ways that you can get to that. It's the tried and true ways. And we're just going to try to package them so they seem really palatable to you to use.
Before we do that, we wanted to talk just a little bit about some of the things that contribute to that feeling of the parties being bored or not feeling like they're getting anywhere. And one of them, Patricia just talked about, is rehashing the positions. And I've been guilty of that more than once, including at CCR mediations, where I'm sitting in a long mediation that's not going anywhere, and a party is giving the same lecture, mini lecture, all over again, in different ways, but the same mini lecture. And so what got me out of that kind of a loop is asking a question that brought him up by surprise, that caught him by surprise. And that's the kind of thing we're talking about. Sometimes it can be an emotional question, sometimes it can address something that they're not talking about. I'm thinking of this one situation that involved a CHA case. And I said, well, I hear you talking a lot about all the things this guy's done wrong, but I don't hear anything about what you would have done differently if you could have. And she went, and it opened things up.
And sometimes the question can be very provocative, and you don't think, is that okay to ask? I had two neighbors who were really in a quite vicious and violent feud. In fact, we're going to get it in the simulation to play with later. And one of the concerns was that they were both bad-mouthing each other in PTA meetings, in school, so that each of them felt they could hardly show their face anywhere in the neighborhood because neighbors were taking sides. And so I said to each of them, so it seems to me you want to be in a situation where you know this person won't be saying anything negative about you. And can you commit to not saying anything negative about them to any of your neighbors? Yes, I commit. I said to the other side, so can you commit also to not saying anything negative in any meetings, any neighborhood institutions? Yes, I commit. So then I said, and do you believe him? And do you believe him? No. Then we were like talking, because now we had something, let's talk about what would it take to believe each other? What do you need to do to believe each other?
Tricia and I wanted to mention feeling statements for a minute. When we're first taught mediation,
And interject, this is just eliminating the unproductive, the rehashing, and now feeling statements.
and want to be careful about this, so if I say this wrong, correct me. But the thing we're talking about is acknowledging emotions is important, and that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about things like this. Tricia, how does that make you feel?
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to vomit on your table, but I feel fine, and I hate when people ask me that question.
Well, you sound really angry.
I am not angry.
What was wrong there? Sometimes that, how does it make you feel? People just don't want to talk about it.
So that's why we X this out. You don't have to use the feeling word to really acknowledge the internal dilemma that people are having. If they're in a conflict, even if they're very rational and logic, they're having an internal dilemma over that. And you don't have to use the feeling word. Like, we'll give that demo later.
The other thing is statements of feelings, like I just did with Tricia, often don't work either. Asking me this question is okay, but for me to make my statement of how she feels, you sound angry, or you are angry, aren't you, isn't helpful, because you just slapped a label on somebody and they may truly resent it, and it may push things backward. Yeah. Here's another one of our pet peeves. We had so much fun doing pet peeves.
These are comedy routines. I understand this is very difficult for you. So that's another one.
Try to eliminate that from your repertoire.
But there's lots of things that have in your repertoire. You don't need those.
So, let's move on. There's conflict, usually in any conflict, especially when it's gone on over a period of time, there are a number of levels of conflict, right? There's the conflict between the two parties that we're taught to look at and explore. And that's important. There's also, though, quite often internal conflict that a party may have on an issue. For example, I was doing a case not long ago involving an employee who was being asked to relocate to another city, and her position was, look, I've been doing a great job here. I'm entitled. I can do my job here. I don't want to move. And it wasn't until we started talking, we did it in the crosstalk, that it became clear to her that the employer valued her, but the employer did not have an ultimate, a long list of choices. She could stay where she was, but get a downgrade, or she could move to a place she didn't want to go, and still keep her job and her salary and benefits. She was going to have to choose. And once the contrast of that became clear, and she understood where her conflict was, it was easier for the in crosstalk for the employer to work with her and for her to serve. So that's one example. I've seen it work on the other side too in employment cases where an employer, I had one of these just last week, as a matter of fact, down in Indiana with an EEOC case, and the employer had a mine, and they had a mine manager who'd been in the top production manager position for almost 15 years, and their position was he'd been unproductive for at least 7. But they hadn't done anything. There were nothing in the performance files. There was nothing. The employer's position was, well, we've been talking to him on a daily basis about how production numbers are down. We have to do things different. So he knows there's a problem. So the way the employer dealt with it is sidestepping it. They had never had a performance discussion with him. They just simply sat down with him and said, we're going to move you to this new position. It's a great position. It's going to take a lot of the stress out of your life. You're going to be a manager of, I forget what the thing was, experimental mining techniques. And it wasn't until he went digging that he found out that meant $10,000 pay cut, and that everyone else in that position was about 25 and an engineer. And we said, what are you doing to me? And that resulted in the charge. We couldn't make any progress on the charge until we unbundled all of that mess and figured out that behind this this bungled effort to keep him was really an interest in trying to hold on to his expertise and his value and his value. It took 5 hours to do that. We got there. But the reason was because it had the employer had to be clear about what their internal conflict was and why it had rolled out the way it was. And then the employee had to feel acknowledged and have a chance to recover from, we're giving you a great job, it's a demotion, congratulations. See? One of the things, and maybe it's because of my background, my journalism background and my law background, but I often approach a mediation from a problem-solving point of view, and I find that oftentimes participants that I'm working with do the same thing. And so what I handed out for you somewhere in that mess is a list of questions Patricia and I brainstormed about that are kind of problem-solving questions that can get you started, and I think work well in a crosstalk. And one of the reasons I like many of those questions is they make mirror. They can be used in a mirror. You can ask one participant, we turn around and ask the other and get a dialogue going. Again, to generate some discussion and move things forward and get past those positions or the what happened. And so what concerns me about this situation is one of my favorite ones because they may not answer it. In fact, they often don't. But I can come back to it later on because it's a setup question. And I can use it again in the caucuses if they have an answer.
But these questions then in crosstalk are also seeds, as Liz was saying. And even though they don't answer, that you get them thinking about it so they can answer in the caucus. But they're also, if they do answer it, you give the other party some information that they may not have had.
Right. And they can use later for, again, for problem solving. Now, behind all of that, though, underneath all of that is the old piece that we're always talking about of acknowledging emotions. And I'm going to turn that over to Patricia.
These kinds of problem-solving questions are not the only way to get at what parties want. Sometimes parties very angst over a situation will give you the clues to what's most important to them. Watch this. So, were you feeling lonely?
No, I wasn't feeling lonely. I have lots of friends.
Now, you notice I used the feeling word there intentionally, but I didn't need to. I just did that, and I want to try it one more time with the same results. But so was it a lonely situation for you?
Yeah. But it really wasn't about that. It was about the fact that he never hears me. We've been having these discussions over and over and over again, and he never hears me. He never hears what I have to say.
So it sounds like what you're wanting is to be heard and acknowledged for your perspective on it.
Yeah, and that my perspective counts.
So I just used her emotional angst to get at what she's really needing. And to do that, where's my
sheet? I buried it.
I'm always thinking we need to develop our emotional literacy. How many of you have already seen my cheat sheet about that? Well, it's worth seeing again. I think you guys are ready. Can you pass them to the second row too? I think you guys got a lot.
This is another alternative to that. What are you feeling? Because with Patricia's not
You know all
here,
my
as
tricks.
you'll see, it's different words that are more precisely honed to get what the issue is both parties see.
Oh, they did have extras.
Got it?
Sure. Pass them. Just pass them to anybody else who's Patricia or just Clay.
I know, that's all right. What I wanted to say while Patricia was passing that out is one of the reasons I think this list is so helpful is it's a way to get at that how are you feeling question, or what are you feeling, but with more precision, so that you can focus in on where the real concern is.
And I think we as mediators sometimes need to help our parties get at what they're feeling. You know, they're locked into their position. And to say, how are you feeling? I mean, people are not used to always thinking about how they're feeling. But if you give them any word, you know, so, you know, were you embarrassed by that situation? Were you anxious? Were you overwhelmed? Then they can say either yes or no. And you notice I'm always putting it in the form of a question. I'm not saying, oh, you sound anxious, or, oh, you must have been overwhelmed. I don't make those statements, because why would I? They're the only ones who know what their internal dilemma is. I'm just asking them, so I can either be wrong or right. And if I'm right, they can say, yeah, that was it. And then the other party knows too, oh, that's what they were experiencing. Or if I'm wrong, great. Then they can bounce off my statement and have me really wrong and say, no, you know, I was really just angry and I was treated that way. So then I understand how exasperating it was for them. Yeah.
To build on the point that you're saying that people don't understand, they don't think about it. Sometimes I try to practice on myself when I get upset and try to figure out a word that describes it, and that's very difficult.
Yes, it is. And so that's why this list, as you see, is not exhaustive. So if you feel like it, keep it around, add to it. But what I'd like you to do now is just read it over and underline some words that you feel comfortable using. Because we're going to use these in a simulation. I mean, why should we just stand up here and talk, right, when you can have a chance to practice this? Yes?
The difference between, you say to her, were you feeling lonely, and was this a lonely situation, is what?
I left out the feeling word.
Right. Made a big difference.
The difference was an impact on her, because the feeling word often sends up red flags for people. And so I don't need to use it to get at. And that's why I even called this, I didn't say words describe feelings. I called it words describe an internal dilemma. Because I think that's what people have, and often they're even confused. Cookie.
Actually, what I thought was powerful about what you said is that you're saying, you know, so you feel lonely sounds like you're making more of a judgment about the person, or it can seem more personal, even if you're not to that person, like they're a lonely person, what's wrong with them. Whereas the situation allows it, it's like external, you know, and so it doesn't have to be about them so much as how the situation is.
Yeah.
Well, that's
That was so powerful about it.
Yeah, that's precisely it, because where you're feeling lonely sounds intrusive. Here's this mediator you've never seen before. It's not a therapy session, right? You're not there. And so what are they doing? But is it a lonely situation, or is it that was an embarrassing, that sounds like, is that an embarrassing situation? It sounds entirely different. And so it's state.
I also think that when you say something like, when you're labeling a feeling, it's very exposing.
Yes.
It feels, you're almost piercing through them without their permission to
Right.
pierce.
Right. Exactly. At the same time, I find that if I do get a word, even a simple word like, so was it uncomfortable for you? Then people are grateful that somebody has recognized their internal dilemma. And I think that's one of our real roles as mediators, not only to engender trust, but to allow them to know they're being fully heard, but also to give the other side some information about what the dilemma has been for them. You know, whether it's exasperation, overwhelm, lack of trust. But then there's also these words at the bottom. Because the other thing I'd like to really do with this is take any kind of anguish that the person is describing to me and always ask myself the question, what does this mean they're wanting? So if somebody's complaining about the weather, it means to me they want sunny days. Somebody is complaining about, how somebody mistreated them, or how it means they were wanting respect, or it means they were wanting appreciation, it means they were wanting acknowledgement for something, it means they were wanting reassurance. I'm asking that question. Were you wanting reassurance? Were you wanting acknowledgement? Are you needing appreciation in this situation? I'm giving them a handle to hold on to. And I'm using their exasperation, their anguish to get at, you know, what's the crucial need here? What's going on for them? And they may not tell me, you know, they may say, get out of my face, you know, but even that gives me information. Like we're going to do a demo, you know. Grant's Drew was going to say, but it's still, you want to use that. You want to use that, even their anger. They don't like this situation. Oh, they want something different. You know, they don't like this mediation. Great, they want more clarity. They want more specifics. What do they want? Let's get at it. Anything they don't like, let's get at it. Great, tell me. We're going to do something different here. It's good information what they're upset about. Very good information. If you just are thinking, what does this mean they need? It means they need something different here. Let's talk about what do they need different.
But if all they're going to do is talk about the other person and what a jerk he was, then you've got to take it. What I do is I step in with some more of my what I call problem-solving questions to see if I can get some responsibility from that person, because if the person will accept some responsibility, even with a simple question like the one on your sheet of, well, if you had this to do over again, could you do anything differently? So what would that be? Get some, then I can hone in to get some responsibility, and then I know I'm okay. Because quite often the other side needs to hear, I'm not the only bad guy around here. I'm not the only one that messed up. You know, we wouldn't be here if it wasn't for him too. So I'm looking for that as well.
But for me, even if a person is really complaining about a person, and even if their description of him is really, you know, major bad guy, major, then I'm saying, so you're wanting to know that you can be in a situation where you can trust. What kind of reassurances do you need? If they can say, or to the other side, what kind of reassurances can you give them that they can trust us in this situation? So using any complaints as a way to get at what they want, and turn, that's the reframe, just turn it into a positive.
Well, you're also flipping it around, which is why doing this in crosstalk is so helpful. Because if you're asking, what does one person need to feel more trust, then flipping it back around to ask the other party, what kind of reassurance can we give them? Again, gets the dialogue going in a way, at a level where maybe some things can happen. Or if they can't happen, some options can be put on the table later on.
So is this making sense to you? Do you see any of these questions and these, my little cheat sheet working in your situations? What are your thoughts about how this would work in your situations or not work? Yeah,
I think they would work really, really well, and I think sometimes in mediation we tend to use words over and over again, and so I think we have to practice, we have to look at the list and know that it really does have the power that you're telling us that it does, because I think some people can say how they feel. I think most people are not that good at it, and I think it also might feel intrusive, and I think we don't want to be LPTs, that would be little pretend therapists.
Thank you very much for that point, Diane.
I don't.
What I see all the time in the mediations that I observe is the overuse of the word frustration.
Yeah.
Just cross it off your list there. I'm sorry it's on there. Cross it off. There's so much better words that really describe what their internal dilemma is. Frustration is kind of so weak.
But it's also about, if you've got the emotion acknowledged, it's also about putting a parameter around that conflict. I mean, I want to go back to that again, because I think the point is you need both of these things. You need the acknowledging of emotions to get deeper, but you also need the problem-solving skills and the framing to get deeper as well, too, or you stay on the surface, which is what prompted us to do this talk in the first place.
Which makes me think of the next demo we are going to do for you. When we first wanted to do this demo, we said, well, there's different kind of parties, and what we need is capacity as mediators to notice different parties. Some parties need a lot of emotional acknowledgement, other parties really want more problem-solving questions, and we want to be able to discern and see which is necessary. So then when we were really practicing and going through, we said, this is too contrived. We use both all the time. We have to use, even if a person is really rational and logical and only wants to talk about the facts, there's still some internal dilemma for them that needs to be acknowledged. And we're going to show you that. And so it's both come together, and that's what can make the crosstalk fighters about.
So here's the setup. This is based on a real life litigation that ended happily, even though it didn't look that way in the beginning. It's a mediation between a teaching assistant at a school district, come on up, Drew, and the supervisor. The dispute started when the supervisor, Drew in this case, told the teaching assistant, and I'll play her, that she was being moved. She had been working with one high school student, and now she was going to be moved to work with another high school student. It wasn't handled well, needless to say, and it resulted in this age discrimination case that was brought by the employee. Anything else you need to know?
No, we finished with the opening statements. We finished with identifying the issues, and now we're into crosstalk. And so, listen, Drew, I wonder what would bring clarity to this situation for both of you.
You know, I don't know why I got moved. All of a sudden, Drew comes up to me one Tuesday afternoon and says, "This is going to be your last day working with Melinda. That tomorrow we can start with Joe."
Do you want to tell Drew how that worked? Just explain to Drew that situation.
Drew, all you did was come in and say, "Look, you're going to be working with Dan next week."
Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's all I heard, period.
That's all that I knew.
Oh, sure. You're my supervisor and you're going to tell me that's all you heard?
That
You
decision
yank
was
me
made.
off?
That decision was made by the school principal.
So it sounded like you both needed some communication, that you were wanting more communication about this list, and Drew, the communication to you needed to be.
She never even came up to me and asked me what was going on.
It's not
What
my
was
job.
wrong.
It's not my job to come.
It is
tell
if you're
you
the one
what's
who's got the
wrong.
problem with it.
Well, you're the one that had the problem in the first place that let me
I never had a
set me up.
problem.
Oh, but
But you
how
know what?
come I'm
All of
working?
this is water under the bridge.
So wait, I hear you both saying you want more, you wanted communication, and we can talk about how you want the communication to be with each other, so that this situation and any others that come up can be clarified.
Well, now I know how she operates. I mean, you know, there is no just coming up and asking someone what was the meaning of this. She just goes and makes a thorough case of it.
So,
That's the only place where you're going to listen to
Look,
me
you know,
if I file a
at this
federal
point, I don't
charge.
even, let's just get her done. You know, let's make a deal. That's what she wants.
so it sounds to me like there's a real sense of urgency for you here, Drew, that you want real clarity and you need it now.
Yeah.
I'm wondering where the conflict is for you.
Well, she has this, you know, we've been working together for a year, and when she's got a problem, she doesn't come and ask me. She doesn't come and say, "I've got a problem about this." She just goes and files this complaint.
So
What's that about?
you're wanting more communication, and where else is the conflict? What else is driving this urgency?
Well, I mean, in hindsight, yeah, the school should have been a whole lot more communicative with her. I was under the impression that the principal and they were going to let her know why the decision was being made.
Drew, why was this?
So,
Well-
let's see, so Drew, this was not even your decision? Are you saying that now,
Yeah.
this is a little unnerving for you because you're kind of the point person here, the one cited in the,
Yeah,
and you're
the
being
point
left-
person, euphemism for the person named in this complaint as the discriminator.
and so you're feeling without support now that. this
Well, I think it's funny that the school doesn't have anybody here with me.
So,
They left me to do this on my own.
so it must be a little unnerving to be put in this position
Yeah.
and not be able. Did you realize this was going on with you?
I thought you made that decision.
I did.
To move me. And it was
You're going after the executioner who was given a sentence to carry out. That's who you're going after. I had nothing to do with that decision.
So you're being put in an awkward position here then.
I'd say.
And Liz, what's most important to you? What's the most thing that concerns you most in this whole situation?
Well, the biggest issue is that all my colleagues are wondering what I did wrong. I mean, I was working with Melinda, and all of a sudden and that was a full-time job. She's a sophomore, and all of a sudden I'm assigned to Dan, who's a graduating senior, and my hours are traveling on part-time. So, you know, people are saying, gee, Liz, what do you do? And I.
Oh, for God's sake, this has
So
nothing to do with your
you-
competency. This has
you
nothing to
really-
do with your competency.
So you really wanted to know if you're still respected in the position you have.
Yeah.
And you're saying that it doesn't have anything to do with that, that's really not the issue of her.
This was a routine reassignment.
And her concern about her respect in her position.
I've always respected you. I've always had the highest respect for you.
Did you know that?
No.
Is that new information to you?
Well, if you came and talked to me, maybe you'd know that.
But that is new information to you now.
Yeah. Yeah, I didn't do that. Otherwise, I could have talked to you.
But it sounds like your job is really important.
Well, that's the other thing you don't understand is, I was working with Melinda, I worked with her for 9 months, I take my job seriously, and so to get moved and not have a clue about what's going on, and then expect me to go running to find it out, that was, man, this is important. I've been doing this job for 13 years, I've liked this work, it's important to me. And so, to get yanked off makes me feel like I did something wrong.
And so it sounds like you're getting some acknowledgement in the work you've been doing, and getting yanked was about the opposite.
Can we not use that term yank? It was a reassignment.
A reassignment.
Yes.
Thank you for that. Appreciate that. But it felt to you,
It felt like yanked.
it felt yanked, but for you, the
It's not
clarity was
routine.
just what you had to do. That was your job,
Yes.
and you did it.
Yeah.
And for you, there's still a question here of what's going on for you personally and what's going on for you professionally.
Yeah.
I'm wondering what your,
Yeah.
you are really loving your job, just wondering.
Well, I don't know if I'm gonna have one in the fall. Typically, I mean, this looks like the start of the way out. I mean, now I hear you saying something different, but I don't know if I'm gonna be working with the kid next year. I don't know what's gonna happen. And everybody else on our team has somebody that they're working with already. I don't.
So you're really wanting some details about
Yeah, I wanna
the
know.
stability here.
Yeah, I wanna know that I wanna join in the fall.
And Drew, you may not even have that information for this point.
No.
But
Nothing's firm yet for the fall.
But are you gonna try?
Yes. I mean, this is not some sinister scheme to get you out.
is that new information to you?
Seriously, sounds a little sarcastic.
That's what you made it seem like.
Well, I think you're feeling like you're really up against it here.
Yeah, what?
Okay, wait, take out the feeling word.
Right
So
there.
does it seem to you? Phew, I just, have these old bad habits. So does it seem to you that you're really up against it in this situation and you're being
Yeah.
exposed here?
From her, who's like leveling this charge of discrimination, to the bastards in the
So wait.
upper echelons that are leaving me to twist in the wind.
So what's important to you here? Well, we've heard from Liz how important this job is to her. What's important to you here?
You know, if I'm being completely honest, I'm in it for the money. I mean, I want to move up to school administration, private schools preferably, so.
So advancement of both your careers is really important to both of you, and we could use this situation to find out how you could both have a situation that would be good for you professionally.
Yeah.
Is that what we should work on? Okay. Okay, what are your questions? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, go ahead.
There was one point when Liz started talking directly to Drew, and you kind of interrupted, but
Right.
say why you did that rather than let them talk back and forth.
Yes, it was a mistake because we were real concerned about how much time this was going to take. And I shouldn't have done it. I should have let them go on. But we didn't want this to take up too much time because we wanted you guys to have enough time to do demos. So after I did it, I thought, in a real mediation, I never would have done that. But we kind of wanted to get to the points and see how you could use upsets to get to needs and wants.
But you're right, because part of what was going on there is we were going back and loop back to the communication issue, and as you all know, that happens a lot. Oh, we covered this an hour ago. I'll go back there again. Sometimes parties just need to go back, and so Patricia short-circuited it because we were supposed to move on to the second point
They were going against the plan, and I knew what it was.
So she's not directive, really.
Yeah, Dick.
Yeah, Drew was putting all this off on higher executives and so forth.
Yes.
Could there have been more discussion of how that could be developed, or how to get more information for Liz?
You know, it could have been, but they weren't at the table. And if I think if I really would have wanted to do that, I really want their needs and wants to be talked about. You know, so that doesn't really get at, he really wants to make sure his career is not going to be messed up by this, you know, EOC complaint. And so what do we do? And she really wants to make sure she's respecting it. And so I'm looking at what they each need and not wanting to go after whoever the bad guys are here. I mean, if it was a legal case, maybe we would, but it's not a legal case yet. It's still.
But I have often gone after that in employment cases, and when I do, I make sure I do it in caucus, because I don't want all these tiers to come back and jump out and hurt somebody. So I might pursue it, if I'd been the mediator, I might pursue it with Drew or the supervisor in private and say, what's going on here? And because it might be part of the options, or part of what gets written into the settlement agreement, depending. But I'm certainly not going to do it in the open.
At one point, Liz seemed surprised that
Drew had not made a decision.
Drew had not made a decision, and he seemed a little perturbed that she had not bothered to come first. Was there any particular reason why that wasn't developed?
I think you're right. It should have been developed more. It would have been a very good thing to develop. It would have gotten us into the whole communication piece, which when we were just practicing this, we decided not to take it on because that's just figuring out how to do that. And so there wasn't that much to demonstrate there in terms of how you take, you know, nasty comments and turn them into what the font size, which we're really trying to demonstrate. But it's definitely the place to go to. You know, it was just one of the issues that need to be talked about, what they each need and expect from communication.
And when this mediation went out, came down, that was one of the first issues that we ended up talking about, communication, because it was easiest. And it wasn't framed as communication, it was framed as, tell me what happened, you know, there's a real disconnect here. And that got into the issues that you're raising, of why didn't, you know, of who's supposed to come first. You know, is the employee who feels hurt supposed to come tell the supervisor I'm hurt, or is it really a better, can it be as important for the supervisor to anticipate how an employee might feel and come first to the employee and give a heads up? Because that's what part of this problem was. You know, whose job is it? It's like when the little kids argue, he started it, or it's whose fault is this? You know, like who's got more fault? And it's really not about who should come first. It's really about what's going on here and how can we communicate. Yeah.
Yes. I'm kind of intrigued at the way that you ask them each directly, what is the conflict here for you? And presumably they've gone through their opening statement, and you have a sense of what their conflict is. Is that a technique that you use a few times in the course? Let's say there's this one mediation and you're expecting it to be 3 to 5 hours or whatever you might presume, I realize you can't predict. Is that something you might have done a few times to kind of use a crucible going down?
Right. As you get different aspects of the conflict coming up.
Yeah, and like, what's the real conflict here? Once you, yeah, because I think you do, and anything that is developed over a long period of time or that hurts a lot, there's usually several different layers, and so you got to work your way down, layer by layer. And I think Kenneth Cloak has a new book coming out on this very subject. And now I can't remember the name of it, but he talks about different layers of mediating at different levels or different layers, and how important that is. But you can't be jumping around. You need to work your way down, and you need to trust the parties. So what Patricia was doing was trying to get at a deeper level than, you know, somebody got moved, somebody is upset.
But what I was trying to do, and I hope that what I wanted to demonstrate was the acknowledgement of the internal dilemma before I asked the question. So before I said that to him, I said, Drew, it sounds like you have a sense of urgency about this. And so I always, my question was always preceded by an acknowledgement of what was happening for them emotionally. You know, except when I was mistaken is the word. I was trying to just say what I experienced, and I think just us as mediators paying attention to what we think they're experiencing and saying. You know, and as I said, it's okay to be wrong. Then they'll correct you.
Well, and that's the benefit of posing it as a question.
Yes.
Right. So you're not
Because if you are off, they'll tell
Right.
you.
And also because, as you all pointed out before, it's not as intrusive as coming across as though you assume you know what's going on. That's really insulting.
Yeah, Jill.
At the end, Drew said something disparaging about a supervisor to kill a bastard, if I heard him right or something, which you ignored. Was that because you wanted to get to a different point, or in a full mediation, would you have explored that and sort of set them up as you two are both against the third party?
But as Liz was saying, in caucus, because
Dangerous in the open setting. People are going to get hurt. Because stuff will get said you can't be packed back into boxes.
But definitely in caucus to explore really what his dilemma is, you know, with the supervisors and how this situation is either ameliorated by it or exasperated by it.
Well, it's your turn. We've got two scenarios as Patricia threatened. No, as she promised. These are good.
These are real life situations.
Real life situations. We're going to break you into groups, up into groups of 3 or 4, depending if you want to be separated from your buddy. The assumption is that in every group there'll be 2 people who want to be mediators and at least 1 person who just wants to observe. Okay? Now, the next trick is once you're in a group, you've got to carry your chair back to a place where you can mediate, right? Drew, and I'm going to let you figure out the logistics.
Well, we can have at least 4 or 5 groups in here, and then the rooms, unfortunately, they had to take the chairs out of the rooms to bring them into here. So
one group can have a round table up here.
So we'll make some groups in here and then out there. So just the logistics of this will take a few minutes. I hope you all have the simulations. We'll do simulation A first. And what we'd like you to practice is using both sheets. In other words, preceding every one of your questions, just for practice. I mean, you know, all of you guys know how to mediate. That's why you're in this room. I mean, you are the certified few. So, and you know, it is a pretty elite position, actually, to be certified by CCR. But just to try and practice with a technique that you may not be using, to each time precede your statement with, so was this perplexing for you? Was this exasperating? Was this infuriating? Was this bitter? And then one of the questions on the sheet, what concerns you most? How does this affect, you know, what's most important to you here? To see if how those questions work for you in these situations. Okay?
Tricia, what do you want to do about debrief? Do you want to debrief after each one, come back here? Or
If we have enough time to debrief after each one, come back in. This is the sound. When you hear this sound, come on back. I have.
Okay.
What you don't have is the respondent in situations.
We'll pass those out.
We're going to come around and give this to whoever is going to be the respondent in the situation. So, picking yourselves up.
15,
Groups of
20
3.
minutes.
Where do you want to go?
Yeah, maybe those of you in the back can take some chairs. You want to be here? Yeah.
Thanks.
Excellent. Thanks.
Where's your recycling underneath?
Right over there. Looks like somebody put their coat on top of it. Oh.
We're just going to interrupt your conversation so you can have a conversation in general. What was significant for you? What worked? What didn't work? What'd you learn? It's fun to be a teenager, though, isn't it? The worst. Just getting tired. Better ask an easier question.
Well, what we came up with was that it was a parent who was creating part of the problem and the parent wasn't in the room. So, that's the issue. How do you resolve a situation where the child can't commit to the parent?
Except if you put too much emphasis on the parent, then you don't let the two teenagers really work it out. There is that influence of the parent, and the parent certainly was really making the situation much more difficult. She had no control over that parent. It's like, I know sometimes I get stuck in mediation with an element that's out of my control or out of the control of the parties in the room. And so it's like, well, why stay focused there? Let's stay focused on what these two parties could do.
I think it would have caused some trouble if the mother had been there, because in ours, the initiator said, no, I didn't know my mom was doing any of this. She went off on her own and did this. I would never have been part of this. So it actually made it easier. If the mum had been there, I doubt the daughter would have said that.
Right.
I got him to admit they both respected each other as athletes.
Oh, that's good.
But I
That's
didn't,
great.
I didn't move it on, so, it could have been, that seemed to be the only.
Right, but that was definitely a bouncing off place, right?
They didn't bounce off.
Yeah.
It was just difficult to know where to take the role and have enough information.
Yeah, but I think once you have that bouncing off place, then the next question is, well, how do you want to relate to each other? How do you want to communicate? What do you want? Do you want to just walk on opposite sides of the hall when you see each other? Or do you want to support each other in athletic endeavors? What do you want to do with this?
I think he did go there. Not in those words, but he did talk about, what did we want to see in our
Relationship
interaction with each other.
Good, good. Phyllis?
Well, we had trouble getting started because Letitia refused to receive me as neutral. So we
That's
had
good. That's how teenagers are. See, she's raised teenagers. You can tell. She really knows how they are.
So we had to do some real hard work, and that was part. I don't know.
And did you get to acknowledge that a lot? That
Yeah,
her distrust.
I hope you felt acknowledged. And it actually
That's a good thing to acknowledge.
It kind of
that
grew,
mistrust.
It grew out of the, at least in our scenario, perceptions of favoritism on the part of the coach. So they came in with a predisposition to.
Right, but I mean that's an important. There's another example of taking a person's mistrust. It seems like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do with this wall? And say, well, you really need some reassurance that you won't get treated unfairly in this situation. And finding out how you make that happen for them. It's a good. Why should you trust?
She knows me. She should. She should trust me.
Anything else?
Well, class dismissed, hey?
How was the agreement written for this? Just out of curiosity.
One of these teenagers lives in my home.
A border, right?
And she came home one day. I mean, she was really furious. She was really gonna. This is a kid we've adopted. She really fought her way through middle school. Everybody in the high school was scared to death of her. And she, she said, I mean, she was gonna really take this girl out. And we talked a long time about needing to do a mediation, She said, I cannot be in the same room with that girl. I could not be in the room without smacking her. And then, we just talked about what her needs were, what she really needed, and, her needs and interests, because she really was on the basketball team, and that was the most important thing in her life. And finally, after talking about this, really, it was not between two people, it was really just us talking to her about what her needs were. And she came home one day and she said, guess what I did, Patricia? I went to the dean, we both went down to the dean, we just talked it over, we said, let's give up this drama because our friends want us to fight, but why should we fight? It's just our friends that want us to fight. I was so proud of her. So, thank you for coming.
Yeah, thank you all.
Thanks, guys.
You are